You're sitting in that meeting and you've been asked to answer a question that you know the answer to like the back of your hand. Except when you start speaking, you realize that time is going on and you are rambling. You are trying to find your answer. It seems like a caveat turns into another caveat, turns into another. And before you know it, you start sweating, perspiring over something you know how to answer. It is your area of expertise. So, what's going on? How come your expertise is not coming through for what it is? Well, this video is about to answer exactly that. Here's the thing, you know that the difficulty answering the question is not down to not knowing the answer. The difficulty is down to something else, but somehow that thing escapes you. So, let's break down what has been eluding you. Now, as an expert in your field, you have all the technical detail. When you are asked to explain your work, the issue is not that you don't know. The issue is actually that you know and that you know too much. Not only that, but you want to explain too much. And so, whereas the audience is asking you for a big picture version that they don't need the actual details to, because of how much you want to give them more detail than they asked for. And in the process, you get tangled. And that's where the problem comes in. It's simply wanting to deliver more information than they asked for, care for, or have the capacity to receive. But once you are clear on the fact that they are not after the answer that you think you want to give, then you can make that shift and you can be clear and they can be clear too. But without doing this, you risk overloading your audience with cognitive load that they really don't need. And this is a pity because it takes away from your expertise, it takes away from your professionalism, and it makes you seem like you don't know what you're talking about. And that's not true. So we want to avoid this at all costs. So, what are we going to want to do instead? Here's number one. Summarize the points you want to make before you even start. Let's say you're asked a question and you think, okay, there are two ways that I might want to answer this from a technical perspective and from a business perspective. Then start with that from the beginning and say, there are two ways I'm going to tackle this question. Number one is from a technical perspective, the other from a business perspective. Doing that from the get go means that the audience already knows what to expect. But the great thing is that you know what to expect from yourself. So you are giving yourself guardrails as you go into your explanation. It lowers the chances that you go off onto a tangent because you know, okay, I need to come back to that second point and I know where I'm going. It gives them insight into where they're going and they're more likely to want to go with you. Give them a summary of what you are going to say before you say it. Then, when you proceed with your answer, here's what you do to stop rambling. You use a framework. There are as many frameworks as there are answers, to be honest. So you use one that speaks to you, or just have two or three that you know are your go tos for meetings in a boardroom, and then use those consistently. For example, you could use a past, present, future. So here's how we used to think about this problem. We considered that it was of lesser priority because X, Y, and Z. What we're now thinking is that it probably has greater importance than we thought. And in the future, we're going to want to look at this particular indicator because that might be what shifts it into being a priority. Past, present, and future. And this way, your answer, even though it's not prepared, the way you will answer it is. And that means you're not caught trying to think on your feet. Another framework I like to use is what. So you speak specifically about some level of the answer. You might give a definition for what you're talking about or the problem that you have. Then, so what? Why exactly is this important? And then, now what? What shall we do now? For example, let's say you're working in ecology or the environment. What? So the problem is that we have too much plastic. So what? Why does anyone care? Well, the increase in the use of plastic has meant that we have seen rising levels of temperature and the climate. And that is important because dot, dot, dot. And then now what? You're going to create the thing you want your audience to do differently, or what you have decided you will do differently or will be implementing. We now have as our goal to have zero plastic by 2050, or whatever the case may be. But again, you see the framing. There are several frameworks that you can use in order to keep that structure for your audience and for them to understand this person knows how it is they are answering the question. Keep that in mind, and this will make everything easier for you as you go forward. Invent your own frameworks. Use something that works for you. There are so many. And number three is last but definitely not least, because the point is be very intentional about what you say last. How many presentations or answers have you given where you end with, so yeah, that's it, basically? Wah, wah, wah. Nothing could signal less seniority than that. Instead, what you want to do is end with conviction. I'm not talking about anything dramatic or a massive mic drop moment. It's simply about ending with emphasis and conviction, knowing that you have given a definite end to your answer. And the simplest way to do that is simply to summarize. It's nothing overly complicated. You started by telling them, here's how I'm going to go. I'm going to talk about the technical perspective and the business perspective. And you want to continue doing that, calling back to what you said at the beginning. So you summarize by saying, so, in essence, what I'm saying is in order to properly tackle this problem, you want to first consider the technical perspective, where I've outlined what we did in the past, what we're considering now, and where we're going in the future, and do the same from a business perspective. Again, looking at the past, present, and future. And I believe that once we do that, we'll be in the best position to take on this problem and to solve it for good. That's a way you might answer a question. And so, in light of that, I am going to do exactly what I just recommended. And so, what we've looked at in this video is that there are three ways that you can instantly stop rambling. And what's the first? You summarize before you speak. That's a great question. Here are the ways I am going to tackle this from this perspective and that perspective. And then you launch in. The second is to use a framework. It might be past, present, future. It might be what, so what, now what. It might be a whole host of things. And you can go and look for frameworks that work for you in your work context in order to explain what you want clearly. And then lastly, always summarize. Even if you felt you bombed on the answer, a summary will tighten the whole thing and give the audience the impression that it was far more well structured than it was, far better structured than it was. So these are three elements that you can do to immediately reduce your amount of rambling and be more compelling when you speak. If you want to get really good at giving presentations, answers in meetings, and you know you're a technical expert and that your expertise keeps just falling on the ground and you not being clear, then join the technical executive because in there, we're going to talk about exactly that. We tackle everything you need to let your expertise match your influence. I'll see you in there.